Hi guys, this is Tristan of Tristan BAMW. As you know, I've been producing bangers for the last year. Relatively new project, but very prolific. I'm a moderately skilled producer. I produce tracks that are adjacent to radio quality, certainly sophisticated in some respects and eccentric, but I have a lot of fun doing it. I've occasionally started getting comments, which is pretty new. I usually don't get very many of those because I'm really small. I don't have a huge audience. But when I do get comments, I was really grateful. A user named Erwin Buisen2 had requested for me to maybe make a video on showing kind of the process of my production, and I thought that was actually a really good idea. So I went ahead to do it today. Anyway, this is going to be a high-level overview of my general process to kind of give you an idea of how someone can kind of integrate into this type of lifestyle without too much complication or expense. So here we go. The physical location for my magic is in the corner of my bedroom on my mattress. This is where the magic happens. I lean and recline against the pillow and produce bangers. I've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of hours since January 2025. I'm ADHD. When I get into my hyper focus zone, the music comes out. I'm 41 years old, and when I would try to produce music in my 20s or 30s, number one, the software wasn't strong enough back then, not without a ton of money. But number two, I didn't have the creative flow that I have at this age. For some reason, my cognitive musicality unlocked when I was about 40 years old. So this is the soundproofing I use. Now, I only got this a couple weeks ago. I made most of my music this year without even having them. Because I don't have a condenser microphone and I have a dynamic microphone, the soundproofing of the room is not as critical. I did want it eventually, and the reason why I eventually wanted it is because I got the Yamaha HS5, which are mid-tier studio monitors. They're not as professional as like a mainstream studio would use, but they're good for the money and they reproduce accurate sound. For a small bedroom, it's ideal, the HS5. And I've only had those for a little while too. When I started in January of 2025, I was using some janky equipment to try and produce. I was using a $10 Dollar General speaker. I was using a cheap pair of Tascams and a phone speaker. So a lot of my mixes were, at the beginning of the year, were less accurate, or I had to work harder to make them sound decent. By May of this year, I had my Audio Technica headphones I'll talk about in a minute. Those were enough to start producing some accurate sound when I would cross-reference with other devices. So anyway, this is my audio interface next to my bed. I have it mounted there so it doesn't move. And I am lying back, and just with my right hand, I control whether I'm using headphones or if I want it to go to the speakers. And this was an $80 interface with two ports, two XLR and quarter-inch inputs and two quarter-inch outputs, which feed to my Yamaha speakers. This interface came with 6 months of Reason Plus free, and Reason Plus subscription is a full suite of DAW. Like that's got all the software, instruments, all of the effects, all the tools. That's Reason Plus by itself is enough to start making studio grade music if you've got the right equipment, like headphone wise and stuff. That was 6 months for free, and I actually made like 40 songs during that free trial, and I definitely recommend it. I have a bigger array of tools now than when I started with the Reason free trial, of course, but that was enough to make some good bangers when I started with that. Then there's my microphone, which is the Behringer XM8500. It is a dynamic microphone. Like I said with the walls and stuff, dynamics are much more forgiving for untreated rooms. They're less expensive as well. This Behringer dynamic was $35, and while of course someone who's mainstream on the charts is going to use a much more expensive microphone, if you're a bedroom producer, an outsider artist, a niche obscure person, this is plenty. This will get you done. However, the next thing I want to talk about is my headphones. I'm a lot more strict on what you can use for making music headphones wise than I am with the microphone. These are the Audio-Technica ATH R50X. The R stands for the open back version, meaning that sound can travel to my ears when I'm wearing them. So it gives me an accurate representation. Audio-Technica headphones, the less expensive ones are the M30 or R30. These are the R50, and then a pro, like someone like a mainstream artist might use the R70X. So that's like the top of the line. These are mid-grade, and if there's only one thing you can spend over $100 and some on in your setup, it's got to be the headphones, because if you don't have a good pair of headphones, you can't get accurate sound from what you're producing in your DAW. So when you go and bounce it and start playing it on other speakers, it's going to sound unstable or inconsistent. You're not going to get an accurate sound. These are like 96% of accurate, meaning that on the Audio-Technica R50X, sometimes they're a little bit subdued on the vocals, and the vocals pop a little bit when I start playing it on a phone speaker, but I've learned to work with that for some time now. $160 is what these cost. That's enough to, that's like going to be your most expensive purchase if you're a poor man's musician and you need something to get started. These are the one thing you want to spend some money on. But other than that, this is my bed. That's my computer where it is when I'm not using it. And this is where I make my bangers. I've made 81 songs. So it is December 2025, and since January 2025, I have produced 81 electronic bangers. My genre is either hyperpop adjacent, electropop, alt pop, and sometimes like industrial type pop music. And I've had more skill acceleration using the help of AI to tutor me, not to actually produce the music. Sometimes I use AI in the video clips that I produce, which I then manually edit in software. But yeah, using AI is kind of like a bedside tutor to ask questions on how to use different tools in my DAW or use different tools in my video production has accelerated the rate at which I've learned to become a more skilled producer. So there, even with AI being as scary as it is, there are some ways that it can be useful as a tool in the course of being a manual musician. But I've used Waveform, I've used Reason, I use Ableton now, which I actually use Reason inside of Ableton, the rack for Reason of all of its instruments and effects. I can mix with Ableton and really kind of hone in on my sound. But for the most of the year, I was using just Reason Plus. And at the very beginning of the year, I was using Waveform, Traction Waveform, which I like Traction Waveform. But once you actually purchase it, you got to spend at least $300 and some to get the full version. I don't ever have that kind of money at once, but Reason allows you to pay $20 a month for a subscription for the full suite, the full software. Ableton allows you to spend $31 a month for the full suite, rent to own. So Reason and Ableton are my two things that I use for production. And then because my music is very niche, very outsider energy, very eccentric a lot of the time, I make sure that I make a cool music video for every banger that I make. And of course it's on a budget because I'm not wealthy. So I have to use my house as an environment, the area around the house on the outside as an environment. And sometimes I go to different parks and stuff to produce as well. I use a number of different software for my video production. The three big ones most people know of are either Adobe Rush, which is basically kind of intro level, Adobe Premiere Pro, CapCut, and DaVinci Resolve. Now, the thing about laptops in 2025 is everybody thinks, oh, we got so much technology, but actually, even in 2025, GPU is a huge constraint on laptops. You're not going to get a powerful gaming GPU unless you spend at least $1,200 or more on a laptop. However, if you want really good power for video editing, you can get good GPU on a desktop for less money. Maybe $700, $800 can get you a better GPU on a desktop. I don't have a desktop. I have a laptop, so I have constraints when I produce my 4K color graded chaos music videos. So I've had to kind of dance between a few different video softwares for different reasons to make my music videos. I'll tell you what, CapCut is really fast on even budget computers, mid-grade computers. DaVinci Resolve is a nightmare on anything but a good GPU. So even a $700 laptop, DaVinci Resolve is going to struggle on. I have to like lower the resolution, lower different I have to lower the bit rate. I've got to do things on DaVinci to make it work, to the point where I actually deleted it because it's too difficult on my computer. Adobe Premiere Pro is kind of a sweet spot. It's in between those two. Adobe Premiere Pro, I'm able to make quite a few 4K videos. I just have to be more patient with it. I have more pain when I use it. I just have to kind of go slow with Adobe Premiere Pro, but it gets the job done. Whereas DaVinci, almost impossible to use it on a $700 laptop. There are others. I recently got Vegas Pro. Vegas is really old school layout, but it's powerful. It's more powerful than people give it credit for. Vegas has some AI tools in it that suck. I don't use them. But for $189, you can own Vegas Pro and not have to make monthly payments on it. And it's always there. It'll give you good color graded control. It has some decent effects in it. And the thing about Vegas and CapCut is that both Vegas and CapCut work better on less expensive computers with less advanced GPUs. So as you can understand, if I've explained it all right, I kind of have to like bounce between video production software to make things work. I get tied up in all the different resolutions, all the different bit rates, and in the future I'll share more information about the different resolutions and bit rates I might choose depending on what the project is or how the color is in the video. Whereas music production, that can hit some constraints on your computer power as well, but not as easily as video. If you're starting out as a new producer and you're just getting into the hobby, you can get a Nemo on Amazon, which is an American company. You can get pretty decent powerful computer for $500 or $600 as a laptop goes. But again, it's going to have a basic GPU, an integrated GPU, and that's going to struggle with video. So maybe desktop is what you will be looking for. So I appreciate your time. I hope you guys have a good day, and thanks for listening to my work.